Robert's going,
I'm stoic. What's going on, everyone? This is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast. I am not your host. I have suspended Travis from his beginning hosting duties because he is messing up the opening so much. But now that I'm sitting here and I'm looking at myself in the camera, I'm realizing it's a little more difficult than I chalked it up to be.
Thanks, buddy.
I am senior meteorologist Max Crawford, along with senior sports Texas A&M writer. That is hard.
See?
Travis L. Brown. Also, on my opposite side is senior sports director Tyler Shaw. Wow, man, thinking of the titles and the names, believe it or
I feel
not,
so vindicated right now.
that's not so easy.
I feel so vindicated right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I just want to call y'all by your nicknames.
well, what is our nicknames? I don't know
Travis and Tyler. I don't know. I don't have a
I was about
nickname
to
for
say,
y'all.
I was unaware of these nicknames that we have.
TNT. Ooh, that's got potential.
We're dynamite.
Yes, yes, you guys are.
We should write a song.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks, Max, for
Welcome.
giving me a week off
It's my pleasure.
from messing up the intro.
It's my pleasure.
Like
I know
you
it's a
said,
busy season for you guys, so
it's
least I
crossover
could do.
season. We haven't
Crossover, man.
when severe weather season comes, we'll pick up the slack.
Travis, I hate to tell you, buddy.
Pop up the Magic Johnson
Yeah.
meme. I'm not gonna be there.
Yeah, not gonna be there for that. Yeah. Anyway,
Max Crawford, Tyler Shaw, we're back.
I already introduced us.
I know.
Okay.
I just felt like I had to
I get it.
start us off again. I don't
Old
know why.
habits. Yeah.
So, as you said, as we were kind of queuing up this whole podcast, you don't want to talk about anything that we're going to talk about today.
I really am happy to talk about some things because and maybe it will help me make actual decisions on where I'm feeling about things because I can understand multiple sides of different arguments surrounding different things. And I would love to hear y'all's perspective from a more neutral outside perspective. And again, I understand several different viewpoints that a lot of different contingents of Aggies are having. There's a lot swirling around the Twitter sphere right now, as it happens when every program is kind of struggling, except for, let me give all credit where credit is due, the Fighting Texas Aggies softball team. They look fantastic, and there's a home series this weekend. And y'all got to get out there.
I want to stop you before we get too deep into that,
Sure.
because I do want to. You mentioned something before that I do want to delve into a little bit, and that is skateboarding.
Okay.
How did you? I don't know. I never was into skateboarding. I never was able to do it.
Okay.
How?
I don't know that I can skateboard much better than you can.
Well, did you
Travis.
do it when you were in high school? Was this like a thing that you did? Or college?
Yeah, a little bit like longboarding mostly. But
Okay.
I can skateboard. I
I've
can
never
barely do an
longboarded.
ollie.
It's easier than skateboarding?
Longboarding
yeah?
is much easier than skateboarding.
'cause
Yes.
it's longer. Therefore,
Were you doing any
you have-
half pipe stuff? Or
No, absolutely not. No. Just
I went
like,
on a half pipe
like
once.
pushing it. Like I can push and then get back
And-
on the board
yeah.
and switch my feet.
What about?
Skate-
Did you skateboard?
I was not a big skateboarder. I had friends that skateboarded, so I've longboarded. We'd always have fun longboarding down these hills.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would not call myself a skateboarder.
I mean,
No,
I wasn't a
nor have
nerd,
I.
so
I
I
hope I
didn't
didn't
do.
give off that impression.
I played sports, so
Wow. Oh, is that a stand that you're taking here?
Tony Hawk is I'd
no,
call him an
I'm
athlete.
joking.
Oh, absolutely.
Although when maybe this was just me, but when I was a kid and the X Games would come on, and I just wanted to watch like baseball night, and it would preempt all the.
That is
it would
so-
make me so mad.
That is so nerdy.
I don't know. X Games is pretty cool though.
That
Right.
It's nerdy to want to watch baseball tonight. Not the
Yes.
X Games.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is somehow nerdy.
It was such a manufactured sporting event. Like. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am actually. I mean, yes, I know I am actually the nerd. I did rollerblading. I did rollerblade on a
You
half
did some
pipe.
inline?
A little inline, yeah.
That's
Well,
probably
inline
nerdier
action.
than skateboarding, but rollerblading's fun.
Yeah,
Well,
I
they
just,
They don't have as many rinks anymore.
And it's kind of coming
No.
back. I see people doing it from time to time.
well, we used to. So I did a lot of roller hockey, a lot of inline
Yeah.
hockey.
That's great.
Played on the TCU inline club team.
I do that in the cul-de-sac.
And pickup
Yeah.
hockey. They used to have a roller hockey rink up in Bryan, but now I think it's pickleball courts. So
Yeah, pickleball's
Sad
taken
day.
over
Times
the nation.
change.
Yeah,
People
time
change.
has changed. Well,
But the Aggies do not.
no.
Or do they? Or do they,
that is
Travis?
let's dive into that a little bit,
Segue.
Max, because two of the teams that A&M had a lot of high expectations on this season were the men's basketball team and the baseball team. The men's basketball, they're in very different portions of their season, but they're kind of in very similar states of play. That is, just not necessarily playing to their peak, to their potential. Is that the same old Aggie, or is that something new? Because that's what you that was your segue into this.
Yeah. Well, now I regret posing that question. I got to choose my words carefully here because, unfortunately, these thoughts are not as emotional as they were, say, 12, especially 24 hours ago. But I'll start with basketball. I think that the suggestion that this is same old Aggies under this regime has a little more weight and validity to it than somebody trying to say that about baseball. And we can delve into why that is here in a little bit. But I think, honestly, Travis, it really just boils down to, it's been a very tough, as a sports fan, past, I think, 6 months especially, but, you could go back to, I think, 2022. I think you go back to fall of 2022 and just say, as Aggie fans, we feel like we've been put through the ringer. And I told you these exact words last night. The most successful run that we've had in any sport, getting all the way to the national championship, being one game away from winning it all, we couldn't even enjoy that because of what happened the very next day. And so it almost, sometimes when you look back at that, you have to go over that hurdle before you can actually clear brain space to be like, oh yeah, but that was really fun, wasn't it? And so it's, I think a lot of Aggies are feeling a little beaten down right now, metaphorically, of course. I think there is still a lot in front of both the court and the diamond seasons. One got to figure it out a little bit quicker than the other. But right now, it's just, it does feel a little bit like, man, we're doing this again? We're doing this again.
Yeah, what do you I have my perspective,
Yeah.
but we're a little more outside. When you go on Twitter, when you go on the message boards last night after A&M's loss to Vanderbilt, it seemed like the sky is falling. Is the sky falling?
I don't think the sky is falling. And I got to kind of put it in the context of what are the expectations.
Sure.
Was this legitimately a championship contending team? What you said, you didn't get to enjoy the baseball season because they were good enough to win the national championship, but they almost did, and it was a great season for them. And then, things kind of got ruined the next day. I mean, if this team makes the Sweet 16, is that good enough to enjoy the season that it was?
I don't know. I hope so.
That's where I come from. Is I don't think it's a national championship contending team. I know March happens and teams get hot and anyone can make a run. But with the talent this has and what they're able to do, yes, they have lost 3 in a row, and you're probably staring at a likely 5 maybe if you don't steal one from either Florida or Auburn. I don't think the sky is falling, though. I think this is a very tough conference, and A&M has treaded water greatly, and they've pulled out some big wins. And it really doesn't matter what happens these next few games of the regular season.
Right.
They're making the tournament, and if you're in the tournament and you win a couple games, I would call it a successful season.
I at this point, I cannot disagree with you. Like, if we made the Sweet 16, that means we win 2 tournament games. Yeah, I think I would be pretty happy. I would love more than anything else. And I mean, this is the type of benchmark you talk about with the program, the way that it has been for decades. Like, making the Elite Eight would be, I think, such an achievement, especially, no, not even considering, it just would be, right? Yeah. It just escaped my brain, but I love that. I love something that you said. So Travis, you keep talking, and I'll try to remember what it was. Yeah.
So I think it seems like with a lot of this stuff, and it's just fandom in general, the bar moves so quickly because I think when the season started, if people ask what would be a successful season for A&M men's basketball, my answer would have been a Sweet 16.
Yep.
Take the next
Absolutely.
step. Maybe Elite Eight. I mean, because of the veteran nature of this team and the having Wade Taylor and things like that. Then they achieved, and you can't take away from what they did in non-conference because they played some really good teams in non-conference and won those games. I think the argument could be more if for some reason there is a little bit more of a collapse at the end of the season, that maybe they just wore themselves out too quickly as they were trying to figure out the best formula to getting the best seeding in the NCAA tournament. But so much about basketball and so much about college basketball is especially if you're in that 1 to 5 seed range, like just get in the tournament and then see what happens. Get there because it's kind of a whole new season and see what happens. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage the SEC tournament because the last couple of years they've had to try to push all the way to the championship game to try to get a few more of those quad one wins to try to ensure their status within the tournament and within the seeding that they wanted. This year they're in. They're going to be in before they even start the tournament. They're in today. So how do you manage that? Is it better maybe that if they do lose out early, that they get a little bit more rest, that they get some time off to rest and heal up? I don't know. I don't know how much I still need a little bit more evidence that this is actually a slump and not just tired into season.
So that's what escaped my brain, and now is back. Is this the longest losing streak of the season?
Yes,
at 3 games. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you put that into context, based on some of the, I think all of the seasons that we've seen in a Buzz coach team, is that like a 5-game losing streak and even more was not that uncommon.
They lost 8 and were a bubble team.
Yeah, and so like maybe it's just that, and it's apples to oranges a little bit, but it's fruit that we're comparing here, right? Football, a roller coaster of emotions too, right? You go right out and you fall flat against Notre Dame and you lose, but then we don't lose for a long time. And then we think, oh, maybe we are going to do something. And so you adjust your expectations all the way up to here. And then we start losing again. And then we're like, oh, but we could still make it if we win this last game. And then we lose again. And then we take a little break. And then we have Christmas. And then we go to Vegas and we lose again. And so then we're barreling into basketball. This is not Buzz Williams' fault. This is not Wade Taylor's fault. This is not Trev Albert's fault. This is not anybody's fault but this sicko brain right here, right? is now we're at the points where, oh, basketball looks pretty good again. We're projected a 2 seed. We just got to close out the season all right. And then you lose 3 in a row. And it's like, are we really doing this again? So that I think is... That's the mindset that like tries to take over from the reasonable side. That's like, well, yeah, but this team has proven that they can bounce back after losses. So I'm just trying to rationalize all of this for you guys.
Yeah.
And saying that honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I get that, but in those 3, the losing streak, the only one that I would argue that you probably should have won was last night against Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Because you lost to a really good Tennessee team and on the road at Mississippi State squad.
I don't know that either of us 3 were expecting us to win that one. I know I wasn't. Because
Mississippi State?
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting us to win that one.
As a loss.
Weird things happen at the hump for A&M.
I'm at the point where I would be just as surprised at us getting to the Elite Eight as I would be us losing out, except against like LSU to finish the season. And what I mean by that is nothing at this point would surprise me from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I think one of the other questions we can pose is we were supposed to win that game last night, but I wonder if a couple thousand more fans would have been worth a couple points.
It was... as I made sure to document on Twitter and in my column last night, it was a pretty sparsely attended game as far as conference games go.
Yeah.
It was the second lowest by the count that A&M gives, which is paid attendance. It was the second lowest attended conference game of the season, Georgia being the lowest. But as A&M was trying to mount a comeback and got within 2 points with less than a second left, there was probably a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people.
So the last 2
Reed?
minutes of game time took like 30 minutes of
Sure.
real time, and
It was made evident by the fact that when all of the media got in the room, into the press conference room, there was a line at the bathroom to use the restroom because everyone had to hold it through the last 30 minutes of trying
Right.
to not miss anything,
Right.
which was kind of funny.
So with like under 2 minutes to go and it being somewhat of a close game, I get that the vibe felt like, yeah, Vanderbilt's got this in the bag. So it's just free throw shooting contest at this point, but everyone was just at the exits. I started filming on my camera, just the long line of people just leaving, and the way it ended, something crazy could have happened, and you would have all those fans that would have missed it. I don't know.
This is the question that I kind of comes back to with this, and that is Buzz's brand of basketball with the roster that he has. They're going to dominate the offensive boards, get second chance points, get free throws, mitigate necessarily some not great shooting performances by that. It makes for what even Buzz Williams has called a tractor pull. Sometimes those games are it's like a football game that's a ground and pound, 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of game. It's not pretty, but they've, up until this last 3-game stretch, they've proved that they can find that winning level and make it work. How much is winning worth it if it's ugly?
Well, I would say it's still worth everything, but the problem is we're not winning right this second. So that's where I think that deflates that argument a little bit. I completely understand what you're saying. Like I said, I think ultimately I agree.
But the
with
Georgia
you.
game was right in the middle of a win streak,
Yeah.
and it was the lowest attended game. And when you look at social media and everything, then it was
Sure.
Yeah, but this is an ugly brand of basketball, and I don't want to go watch that.
And Vanderbilt was a 2-game losing streak. You're not talking about a 6-game losing streak. They just dropped 2 games. They're still a top 12 team, and you go into Vanderbilt expecting to win.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think some of the people anyway who regularly listen to this are on the Twitter sphere and have, all three of us tweeted some form of observation about the attendance last night. And like I've told you 100 times since then, Travis, is like, I ultimately agree with you that the attendance is a problem. I just don't know that I'm completely settled on why it is, / if Aggies in general are to blame, / if it's something that like we as a fan base who calls ourselves the 12th man needs to have a come to Jesus moment and realize like maybe we're not that as diehard of a fan base as we thought we were when it comes to sports that aren't football or baseball. Like, we could probably add baseball there
because there's usually a line for tickets to baseball games. I think that's a point. And, when we were kind of discussing this in the press conference room after Buzz spoke, there was a couple of real old timers in there that were like, "This isn't a new argument."
Sure.
This has been the case, and I mean, I think we're mostly all aware of that. Even if you go back into, this is just a silly anecdote, but if you go back into the yearbooks, back into the early 1900s, they actually started a basketball team in like 1905, but then had to fold it because no one was really interested.
Yeah.
And then it didn't come back until like 1912. And then they had a couple years before it actually was a full-fledged, we play other colleges basketball team. And so from the get-go, it's kind of always been a secondary, an afterthought.
Yeah.
If you look at, it all comes back to the money. There isn't a whole lot of NIL support for either of the basketball teams from all the sources that I've talked to. And then even in the financial records, when you look at last year's finances that they did report to the NCAA that we got through an open records request, 7th, the men's basketball team is 7th in giving to the 12th Man Foundation, behind I think women's golf and women's tennis. too, and women's basketball. So there is indications that back up that claim that seems anecdotal.
There's absolutely writing on the wall of like something needs to happen to drum up support from across the board, attendance, financial support, all that good stuff. I don't know where it's going to come from, and my hope and thought was if this Buzz coached team continues to win, I think there is essentially two things that could happen from that. Like let's just say, for the sake of arguing, that we do make it to the Elite Eight. My hope is then that the powers that be, from me up in the nosebleeds all the way down to the big money Ags, see that and say, look what we did with this. Look at the lemonade that we made from that situation. Well, let's throw in some more sugar and water and see what else we can get. Or conversely, I think you could get a situation where it's like, well, we didn't pump that much money into the program, and look what we're able to do. So clearly, you don't need it that badly. But I think that would have been less likely, especially from the people like you and me that would see the W's on the box scores and the records and go, okay, well, I want to go watch us win basketball games. So yeah. I mean, a lot of people responded to my tweet, like 40 people. I tried to respond to everybody, but a lot of people shared the common sentiment of like, winning solves everything. And to that, my first thought was like, well, until very recently, we have been.
Yeah.
Losing 3 games, I mean, yes, it is exacerbated by the fact that they're right together. But in this SEC this year,
sure,
losing 3 games is probably going to be part of it, within a couple game stretch.
Yeah, and then I think you can say, well, the casual fan doesn't understand that. And it's like, yeah, but the casual Aggie is supposed to be more than the casual other college sports fan. Or at least that is the standard that I was like raised as an Aggie to believe, right? Regardless of sport.
It's a culture thing, because I mean, I don't like the winning solves everything, because what are you supposed to do? Never lose a game? If Kentucky loses 3 games in a row, people aren't canceling their season tickets,
right?
Kentucky ran
4
off
games maybe
one of a Hall of Fame coach because he wasn't getting far enough in the NCAA tournament. You don't necessarily run off a coach because he gets you to a 5 seed and not a 3 seed for a program that doesn't have a large history in NCAA tournament wins. And that's the thing. Was the whole point of my column last night, is it doesn't necessarily Tyler and I at least are objective observers, so it doesn't necessarily matter to me if there's fan support or not. But it is interesting in this current world of NIL and transfer portal that if there are teams and coaches and players that see, okay, well, there's not a whole lot of support for some of these games in our home gym. When we go and play neutral site games that are supposed to be neutral, they're really away games, even within the state. And then when we go to the NCAA tournament, thinking last year at Memphis, there wasn't a whole lot of A&M fans there. And that's when they made the NCAA tournament in a drivable distance spot. There wasn't a whole lot of A&M fans there.
That Houston Cougar fans there.
It's like, okay, well, do I want to go play my last year here as a coach or coaching staff? Do I want to go to a place that there is just a little bit more support? And then you're starting all over. I know there's a ton of A&M fans, or at least from the loudest people on social media, who would be fine with Buzz Williams and some of these players leaving and starting over. But kind of something I want to pose to you is, I don't know right now if you are a program that doesn't have a lot of support and isn't necessarily supporting these programs with NIL. What kind of coach can you lure in?
Well, going back to when we talked about Kentucky running off their Hall of Fame coach, they have the support and backing that they're going to throw money at that program to get who they want, and they got someone who they think they want, one of their own, and they're going to throw money to build that program. A&M's not in that position right now. So if Buzz Williams does leave, if a lot of these players do leave, I'm not so confident you can turn it around all of a sudden. Because, I mean, as it is right now, I think you are at about as good as you're going to get unless some drastic changes happen. If you don't have this support financially, you're not going to get much better than this.
And it has to be stated, in the world of college basketball, shooters require money.
Yes.
If you want shooters, if you want good, consistent offensive talent, that requires money. That is the football, the equivalent of the quarterback in football, or the standout running back. Like, shooters require money.
Yeah. I'll go to my alma mater, BYU, who, I mean, they've had a basketball culture for a while. They coming in, they have the number 1 NBA draft prospect, which a lot of people were surprised that, why didn't he go to Kansas? Why didn't he go to Duke? They have a billionaire donor who owns the Utah Jazz that's a BYU fan that he is implementing. He is backing BYU basketball right now, and it is apparent with the players that they're bringing in, the coach they hired. See, I can already see the kind of difference it's making, because you need that in this kind of day and age.
Do you think, Max, from a fan's perspective, any fans will ever get to the point where they can kind of go, okay, I understand how NIL works, and if we want to be a school who is good at football and baseball, and so we will be just okay with what we can roll out there with basketball, Olympic sports, whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's entirely possible that happens, right? I'm going to stick to just forecasting the weather and not forecasting the future of this program, but I do think that there are essentially 2 paths that we will take after this season. And if we want to have the type of success that we have, like being consistently ranked, especially with this team this year, it is going to require more resources. And like I keep mentioning, from the nosebleed seats all the way to the people who are courtside, it's going to take more fan support. It's going to take more financial backing and all that, regardless of who the coach is next year. I almost broke my rule. Or you go the other way and you keep things as they are, and I think the potential is there that you don't see any growth in this program. And to answer your question a little bit more directly, I think it is entirely a possibility that the fan base at large says, yeah, you know what? We've got football in the fall. We've got baseball in the spring. That's where we're going to dedicate our time and money. And you know what? Maybe our basketball team will have a couple of fun games here now and then that I can catch on TV. And like, as somebody who just follows all Aggie sports, it kind of sucks to like speak those words, but I do think that's a definite possibility in this age where it seems like more than ever, financial support is one of the most important things. Like, dude working 9 to 5, maybe in the early spring I don't have time to go to a Tuesday night game, and that's fine. And I'll try to get out to Olsen Field once or twice over the weekend, and then I'll have summer, and then it'll be time to think about football again. Maybe the average Aggie fan's mental capacity is like, I'm fine with that. I'm a root for football. I'm a root for baseball. I don't really understand basketball, so I'm not going to go out and do it. I will say, because I think that sounds a little dismal, but I will also say I don't think it is quite as hard as, well, we need somebody to drop a bag to get this recruit. I think that's helpful, obviously. But I think let's just say the attendance been better this year, or maybe fans were buying more of Henry Coleman's printed T-shirts or something like that, I think that is something that you can use as a catalyst to then get more support. If these big money Ags are seeing like how into basketball this fan base is, if they're seeing the raucous crowds and stuff like that, like I think that's how you can spark additional contributions from the people that can maybe go out and help you fetch those recruits, while we, the regular people, are contributing to a good atmosphere that we claim we can do at every single sport.
I think someone, I can't remember who was on Twitter, but someone made a good observation, and I think that is A&M fans love being the underdog.
Sure.
They love being the scrappy, lunch pail kind of, under, especially in basketball. Because if you look at last season, by the end of the season, there was lines out the door to wait for student tickets.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't been that way this season because they aren't the underdog. They're supposed to win most of the game. So there is something to that. When we talk about support, it's a completely different story with baseball. I mean, you look back last year with getting Braden Montgomery, who was the #1 transfer portal player in the portal last year. That involved a whole lot of support. There is the player development center that's going to be in the works to revamp Bluebell from a development from a player amenities standpoint. And they have a lot of expectations, too, coming into the season as the #1 team. They were a game away from winning a national title in a top 3 sport. But it just hasn't completely clicked together yet. Tyler, I know you've probably gotten to watch a little bit more from in studio than out on the diamond. But what do you diagnose here? Because especially the last 2 games haven't looked so hot.
Well, my biggest question mark coming into the season was the bullpen, and that is still a huge question mark. And that could be a problem when you're talking about not just postseason, but making another Omaha run. You're going to need a bullpen. You need more than a weekend rotation. You need more than 3 starters. Period, to make a deep run. So that was my biggest question mark, and we're kind of seeing some of those concerns. That kind of stuff can work itself out over this. The thing that I am most confident will work itself out is the hitting. This team has been praised, and how dangerous this lineup can be, and we just haven't seen it yet. And baseball is so weird. There's so many, people go through slumps at different times, and a lot of it might be mental. Maybe there was kind of that burden of #1 team. Hey, my teammate is Jace Lavalette. He might go #1 in the MLB draft. I gotta support him. Maybe there's a lot of that mental going on that's kind of clouding the hitting. That I think will work itself out. Will the pitching? I guess that's to be determined. But it's a little surprising. But I also say it's not even March yet. There's a lot of season left to be played.
The bullpen has to find a way to learn how to find the strike zone.
Yeah.
Because it was in the Texas State loss, there was 13 free passes. I think it was 10 walks. One of them was an intentional walk, and 3 hit batters. 5 of Texas State's 7 runs, 7 RBIs were from walks. They set the table for them, and people have said about the SEC for years. It doesn't matter if you give up the home run or if you give up, the one triple. It's as long as you don't stack up runners in front of the guy that hits the home run or hits the bases clearing triple, because then you can manage 1, 2, 3 runs. And don't get me wrong, Texas State is a good team.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that they lost.
I was looking up and I was thinking, this has got to be Texas State's biggest win in program history, but they're 4-8 against #1 teams all time. The last one was in 2022 when they beat Texas at Texas when they were #1. So they're used to playing #1 teams and doing pretty well against them. But with any of those teams, whether it's a Texas State or whether it's any team in the SEC, the more time you put runners on ahead of runners, the bats are going to have slow days. But 3 runs could be enough to win a ball game. You just can't keep putting runners on ahead of good hitters and making what should be 1 run into 2 or 3 runs.
And I think it might be underrated what Max Wiener did a great job of doing that, of getting his guys to find the strike zone. And we saw the development of the pitchers over time last year, and how much of an asset that was. So, again, it's to be determined, how does this new staff and Jason Kelly get these guys right?
The other thing, too, is fielding. And that... I mean, they have the, let's see, I pulled this up here.
Other than Terrence Keel, shout out his amazing catch in the outfield.
A&M is .955 fielding percentage, which is 231st nationally and 15th in the SEC. They've had multiple error games in all but 2 games this season. And that defense wins championships. I know that's cliche, but especially in baseball, that defense has to be perfect. You just need to lean on the fact that your defense is going to be good, and then you mitigate for a bad pitching night or a bad hitting night. part of that is they have a lot of guys playing in a lot of different and new positions. Caden Kent's playing shortstop. He hasn't played there in a long time. You had Wyatt Hensler playing second base. He hasn't played there in a long time. Gavin Grahovic, actually, who was leading the team in errors, we found out had the torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder, which could have been exacerbating some of those problems as well. And so Blake Benderup is in the lineup at first base, which this is his first year starting. And so this is going to be a little bit of a thing moving forward too, because now you're going to have Hensler at third with Grahovic out. You're going to have Sawyer Farr, who's a freshman, or Terrence Keel, who's a freshman, playing second. And Keel has played some second in high school, but he's working his way into being a college player at that position. And then that rotates everything else. So they need a little bit of consistency and continuity for several games to kind of settle in to see if this is, as Mike Gurley says, is this a thing or is this not a thing?
Right. That's the way baseball go. That's that. At this point, I feel like that's all that I really have. Yes, bullpen needs to be figured out. You mentioned the RBIs and I think a lot of those hits came off of the second strike, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of them were full count or 2-2, and man, you're so close to getting the punch out to like wrap up the inning or at least get this guy out, and then boom, here's a double. So like that's the crazy thing about baseball is that we can be not that far away, even though the box score says otherwise. And I think the Texas State loss wouldn't have stung as much if we didn't just drop that random one on Sunday. But if you just take both of those in a vacuum, it's like, that's the way baseball go. And Tyler, I like what you said about, like, yeah, the bats will figure it out. Like, they don't just not have the talent anymore. And the patience with the at-bats, especially with your guys like Jace and Hayden last year, I don't think they suddenly lost that vision and that patience. Maybe there's just like a lot of expectations on their shoulders, and I think baseball is one of those things where mental stuff can get to you actually pretty easily with how precise of a game that it is. So like I think it might just be something that they have to play through. And fortunately, we have a really, really good slate of games this weekend where we got to figure it out. Like Rice isn't bad, but you know. I'd be pretty worried if we lost to them. Arizona's a good team. Oklahoma State's a ranked team. So, like, you know, all of a sudden we go into this weekend and we come out of it 3-0. I think we could probably breathe a little easier. I think there's a reality where we drop one or even two of those games. Am I more worried then? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But I'm still taking this in stride and saying, look, it's the first year of a head coach. He's got to figure some stuff out too. And one of the best ways to do that is to just play through it.
The early season showcase series is always where you kind of figure out who those guys are going to be, especially the bullpen. I mean, if you think 2 years ago, that was the coming out party for Evan Oschenbeck.
Right.
In that extra inning game against Texas Tech where he threw like a bajillion pitches.
I think it was a bajillion.
Yeah, and closed it out. And that kind of just carried him into that role of they're going to throw him a bajillion pitches and just win ball games with him. So
I've liked what I've seen from the hometown kid, Rudis, so far.
Yeah, Rudis has been one of the best options, and he's actually when he came in the was it the Cal Poly? It was the first series of the Elon series. That was really his first action of the spring because he'd had a little bit of a shoulder thing, and so they kind of threw him out there without having some live hitting in practice, and he's done a good job. It'll be interesting to see if Josh Stewart can get back in. Of course, he went out with kind of a knee injury.
Yeah,
he was a big part of last year too.
He was a big part of last year.
Still need to get Sorrell back also.
They need to find that guy. They need to find that guy out of the bullpen who is going to be, okay, you know, when Prager goes out on Friday, this is going to be the guy they bring in, whether that's fresh corn for 3 innings or if that is a middle reliever guy. They just need that next guy, and I'm not quite sure who that guy is going to be.
I think he could be on the roster, though. I think there's a very decent chance that guy's there.
Yeah, could be. I mean, again, I think we've talked about it before. You're not going to replicate Evan Oschenbeck.
No.
I don't think you need to.
Right, exactly.
But it's still so early that, yes, they could figure it out.
Got to pick up the offense and pretty quick, though.
So we'll be down there for all of that going on in Houston. So you can check KBTX.com and all of the broadcasts we have on here for a little bit more of that. Game day is at Florida.
Yeah,
it's
that's
first
a big
time.
one.
I think it's the first time in the Williams era that it's been at an A&M game, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't think of one that they've had. So
yeah, so that's going to be an interesting lead up into that. Any thoughts or predictions? Do you think? I actually think A&M gets out of the losing streak against Florida.
I'm fine with that prediction. I think we go 2-1 to finish the season. I just don't know who we steal one from.
I could see him splitting Florida and Wade's under 40 points is 30 something away, 35
35 points away
from the record. So we're looking at likely the last home game of the season, number 1 Auburn, and Wade Taylor is likely going to become A&M's all-time leading scorer.
We got to pack it out for that one. I think we will.
They will. It's number 1 Auburn.
Yeah.
They'll pack it, but it is going to be quite the game.
It is
on
fast.
Tuesday.
It's just a fascinating dichotomy that you have probably one of the slowest offensive times of pure offense in A&M basketball with this Buzz Williams era, but it also produced the
all-time leading
points
scorer.
champion.
Yeah.
And I think that Wade gets some knocks because of the style of play around him. Even though it's a winning style of play, I think he gets knocked for that. And so it is kind of interesting to see a guy who probably should have his jersey retired and probably is one of the best players to suit up for A&M, kind of flying under the radar a little bit. I don't know. It's it'll be interesting to see, but yeah, he should be able to break that against Auburn next week.
Unless he goes off against Florida. That's
possible.
That's on the table.
It's in
too.
striking distance.
He can get 35 points
It
in a
is
game.
in striking distance.
For sure.
So we'll have all of that coming up in this week to come. So be sure to check all of our channels for all of the coverage from that. So for Max Crawford and Tyler Shaw, I'm Travis Brown. This is the Aggie Game Day Extra podcast, and we'll see you next week.